Welcome back to this mini-series about home gym essentials, where I talk about the most important pieces of equipment that you should get first because they are not only multifunctional, but also at the lower end of the price range. We all know that you can spend a fortune on awesome looking gym equipment that you will hardly ever use, but granted still, it'll look cool when your buddies come around and it'll give you bragging rights. Now I didn't have a fortune, but if I did, well, I probably would have spent it on hookers and blow, not on gym equipment. But since I didn't, there is no need to waste time worrying about it, is there? Fact is, even when I had my CrossFit gym, I tried to stay away from expensive one-use equipment like a ski erg, for example. Instead, I bought all kinds of weird stuff that could be used on more than one specific exercise. And one thing I got was old tires in different sizes. Because number one, they're free, and number two, you can do so many things with them. If you get a little creative, it's not even funny. Especially not for the guys that have to do it. So that all being said, let's go outside and check out what you can do with tires. There are quite a few exercises that you can do with just the tire, but it's also a great piece of equipment if you combine it with some other of the stuff that you most likely have around, namely some free weights, kettlebells, or sandbags. Let's look at the tires first. I picked up two old tires of different sizes for free from an auto repair shop. One is 30 centimeters high with a diameter of 60 centimeters, that's 12 inches and 24 inches. The other one is 50 centimeters high with a diameter of 100 centimeters, that's 20 inches and 40 inches. The first thing people think about when they hear tire is flat tire. Yeah, but no, I'm talking in a fitness context. Right, tire flips. None of my tires is heavy enough for tire flips, and I've found that tires that are big enough for that just take up too much space and are too difficult to move to use them for much else. But if you have the space, by all means go for it. The second thing people think when they hear tire is sledgehammer. And yes, we will get to that, but first I want to talk about some of the less obvious things that you can do with those tires. I want to use a tire like a sled that I can drag behind me. First thing I do, I take a ratchet strap and tighten it around the tire. The other option would be to drill a hole into the tire and attach an eye bolt. This will then allow me to attach a pulling strap with or without a harness. Alternatively, I can attach a real rope and pull it towards me, and that means my horizontal rope pulls are covered as well. You can attach the rope using a tubular sling like I showed you in the last episode when I explained the setup of my pull station. Alright, let's talk about hammer time. I love using the sledgehammer because you move in the transversal plane. It's an actual tool that has a real-world application, and the movement pattern is combat related. You can either use it as a filler in between sets, or keep your heart rate high and improve your ability to focus in an exhausted state. Or you can just go all beast mode and work on power generation. Next up are Nordic Hamstring curls and GHD Situps. Make sure you put plenty of spare weights into the back of the tire as a counterweight, or you will face plant rather spectacularly. Now this may or may not work well, depending on your tire size in relation to your height. I am 173 centimeters, that's about 5'9". Before you try those, please watch a video on progressions and start with a less difficult version. Or don't, but don't come complaining after you pulled your hamstring. Knees over toes guy has a great instructional video on his YouTube channel. If Nordics work with your tire, GHD Situps should also work. Remember, the difference to regular sit-ups is that the power comes from extending your knees as hard as you can. In the starting position, your body forms a straight line from the knees to the shoulders. And when you initiate the movement, your abs have to resist the momentum created by your leg extension rather than curl up your torso. Another thing you can do is step-ups. Yes, I know you could do step-ups with a lot of things, but the tire is slightly uneven and unstable, which forces you to be more precise and trains your balance as well. You can do them as a bodyweight exercise, add a kettlebell, or go all the way up to using two different sized weights to push the complexity level even more. Credit for the next one goes out to Pat McNamara. He calls it the black hole. You dump the bag into the hole, then you get up on the tire and pull it back up to throw it outside of the tire. Then get down and repeat from the other side. Great exercise for cardio, using different planes of motion, and it also works your grip. It teaches you attention to detail, especially to double check bags that you want to get rid of to make sure you didn't leave anything in there that could be used to identify you. Before I tell you why the next one is called bag of body parts, I need to show you something. In order to stop the tire from rolling around, put some sort of blocks underneath it. I'm using kettlebells, that works pretty good. Again, I like to use stuff I have laying around anyway, rather than getting some extra blocks that would only be used for this specific purpose. I got this one from Mac as well, and it's called Bag of Body Parts for pretty obvious reasons. Because before you can dump those bags in the black hole, you need to throw them into your truck and pull them back out. Don't be a lazy bastard and try to avoid the extra work by just dumping the bags on your own property. If you can step up on a tire, you can also jump up on it. As with the step ups, this is a bit more difficult than using a box since the tire is not perfectly flat and the surface is not completely stable. That means it requires you to really stick the landing, which I think is great. I am not a fan of high rep box jumps, especially if they are done in a cyclic manner rebounding off the ground. First of all, plyometric rebounds should not be done in high repetitions unless you want to risk injuring your Achilles tendon. Which is stupid, but of course you are free to do whatever you want, just remember, no complaining afterwards. That's also the reason why I step down instead of jumping down. Now I do like plyometrics and you can even use the tire for them. Just remember, in order to qualify for the definition of a plyometric jump, your contact time with the ground has to be less than 1/10 of a second. I would advise you to do less than 10, probably better less than 6 repetitions. Rear leg raised single leg squats are sometimes called Bulgarian squats, and they're one of my favorite exercises for developing strength and control in the lunge. As with the step-ups, the weight and the positioning of the weight you use will have a massive effect. As for foot placement, I found that 3 feet out from the tire works best. And yes, I deliberately pushed the leading knee over the toe. You heard me talk about single arm bench presses before, and here you go. No need for a bench though, the tire is just fine. Even when using a bench, I prefer to just put my shoulders in contact with it so that I have to do more stabilizing work myself. Pistols. The unstableness of the tire gives pistols another kick, but you can actually use the tire to help with stabilization by sliding your outside leg along the tire. This is great if your main issue with pistols is your lack of balance and not your lack of strength. Of course, in that case, using that idea with a stable box would probably be even better. I mainly use the small tire as a sandbag replacement for movements like lateral and overhead throws. Depending on the tire, you might even be able to use it like a slam ball. You could absolutely use it as a pulling sled like I showed you with the large tire, but you definitely need to put some weights in it. What I originally got the small tire for was to practice my stamp kicks, and for that it is pretty much perfect. If I hit it correctly, it even caves in a little, which for some reason is disturbingly satisfying. And finally, I used the small tire as a barbell holder for landmine exercises. The bar doesn't get scratched, and even though it rolls around a slight bit, it stays inside the protective tire. So that was it, my take on old tires and why I think they are a great tool to have. One last suggestion: if you store the tire outside, cover it with a waterproof sheet, or you will have water inside the tire almost all the time. Well, I guess that depends where you live, but you get the point. It just makes more of a mess than necessary, and it can end up being a breeding place for mosquitoes. What are you still doing here? Oh, questions. Oh yeah. Well, sure. Write them down there in the comments. And don't forget, leave me a like. And make sure you check out my list on exercise instructions so you don't injure yourself. I see you next time. That's it. Go away.